Peace. Hey, what's going on, people? This is Zaire coming back at you again. Hope all's been well with you and your family. I just want to touch on this Africa Bambaataa situation again. He has passed away, and I wanted to give it a little bit more nuance. I tried to approach it before, but I feel like I left some things out, so I'm going to give it more nuance. His real name is Lance Taylor, and he was born in the Bronx on April 17th, 1957, and he passed away on April 9th, 2026. They say in Pennsylvania, and that he passed away of cancer-related illnesses. Um, Africa Bambaataa grew up in Bronx River Projects, which is on the southeast side of the Bronx. I personally am from the west side of the Bronx, but I had relatives who lived in Bronx River Project. So as a child, I'm born in 71, I would go over to see my relatives from time to time. And uh, the thing is, I would see street jams and that inception of hip hop and the whole energy and everybody outside, the outside park jams, you know, I definitely walked through those jams, saw things, and people were just having fun, from the outside because many people, because Bronx River at that time in the late 70s, early 80s was considered ground zero for hip hop. This is before they started to call Cool Herc the father of hip hop and so forth. Everybody was going to Bronx River from all over the city, and Africa Bambaataa was looked at as, as the original Godfather. Which the truth of the matter is that in my opinion, like children actually created hip hop. But that's a story for another day. At any rate, so yeah, I saw the energy and so forth, and he is regarded and credited as one of the pioneers for hip hop breakbeat DJing. African Bambaataa also founded and led the group, the Soul Sonic Force, which released the hit single Planet Rock in 1982, which was their biggest hit to date. And, that kind of exploded on the scene. And, many of us as children, I remember battling and dancing and having dance battles and electric boogieing. And, we have fun. It was a really exciting time if you was a child on one level, but then, only a few of us, if any, really, I haven't heard any children my age speak about it, but only a few people knew about, the horrors that was going on behind the scenes. Mostly, I would say in Bronx River Projects, then probably as Bambaataa began to travel. And, these are, alleged, he never went to court, but, on the streets, the streets don't lie. We definitely believe it because there's too many young men that came out and have accused him of sexual abuse and who don't know each other from different parts of the world and different parts of the country. So it's just it's too much of a groundswell, and he and African Bambaataa basically have very little to say on the defensive end and so forth. He did have an interview denying the accusations, but he never showed up. One young man, I think it was 2021, they call him John Doe. He actually won by default in court because Africa Bambaataa actually never showed up. So there was one person who tried to take him to court, and it's very telling when you don't show up for something like that to defend your name. Hassan Campbell and Ron Savage came out in 2016. Hassan Campbell being the loudest advocate for defending children, using against sexual abuse, using his situation with African Bambaataa as a representative of what not to do, what not to allow happen. It took a lot of heart for him to do that. And, he's not a perfect guy, but I take my hat off to him. Ron Savage also accused him. They aka B Stinger, but he also later would forgive him and see him in person, and and kind of make amends with him. Um, Africa Bambaataa was, in the 80s and late 70s, was definitely a magnetic, larger than life figure. He ran the Universal Zulu Nation, and which started off as the organization in the early 70s and went to the Zulu Kings, which was a crew of breakdancers, and they were a division of the Black Spades. And he had a lot of power and influence early on. And Zulu Nation was seen as a cultural movement and also as, a street gang. To keep it real, it was also seen as a street gang. And people respected Zulu Nation. Some people feared Zulu Nation, but Africa Bambaataa, being at the head of it, attracted, as a DJ, a lot of people to him, and definitely a lot of kids who wanted to be part of Zulu Nation, who wanted to break dance or be a dancer, or help out in some sort of way. They on the outset, it looked like something that was positive. 'Cause anything negative that was going on, people did not really speak of. Definitely not to the youth. And if something happened to a child, I'm imagining that the child kept it inside and didn't tell, because there was just too many people that are now coming out saying that this happened and that happened, and they can't all just be lying. I mean, one guy was in the UK, so my thing is, I just, I want to give my respects to, any alleged victims out there, because anything happening to a child by an adult is repulsive and horrible. And I stand with, any victims. In this case, it happened to be a lot of boys at the time. These boys are now grown men with children, and some of them have grandchildren. And I imagine it's very difficult to come out. A lot of guys are alpha males and have pride and so forth, and just don't want to put their family through it. And I respect it, but I'm just saying, I stand with these victims, these alleged victims. Now, we have to ask questions about our community and about not just Africa Bambaataa, but he becomes the face of a larger problem as far as tolerance and complicitness in our community, and what we allow and what we see and what we turn, away from, and act blind and put blinders on, act like we don't see. When we see something that's strange, we have to speak on it. That's what this should teach all of us. Doesn't matter a person's status. I heard KRS-One once say, like, the leaders have to be untouchable, or they're not leaders and so forth. And I was really disappointed by him too, because he stood right by Africa Bambaataa, and it was like it's things like that kind of protect, people who are accused of being predators and so forth. And and it's no kind of everything is like it's a money grab. And my thing is, well, why would somebody wait until they, like, almost grandfathers to, want money? Some of these people are doing okay in life. They're not all just, starving people. Some of them actually became successful men. So it's not always about that. And I just didn't like the dismissive nature that not only KRS-One exuded, but many people in that in his peer group exuded. And until we change this behavior, we're not going to be able to move forward as a culture or a lifestyle, because it's really a black eye on the Bronx. It's a black eye on hip hop. It's a black eye on New York hip hop culture mostly. We have to clean out our own backyard. Different cities have problems, different areas and regions have problems. This is a problem that is New York based that needs to be cleaned up, and some people are speaking out in this generation, which is great. But like I said, I just wanted to give some nuance to it because the other part of it is that no matter what Africa Bambaataa contributed to hip hop and the Zulu Nation contributed to hip hop, all that gets overshadowed by your bad deeds and your shortcomings. And whatever you do will, as far as being good, the good things you do will always be overshadowed by your worst deeds. That will always affect your legacy. You can't do good things on one hand and just point to the good things and do these dirty, nasty, despicable things on the other hand and expect everybody to sweep it under the rug. And we have to stand up as a community. We definitely do. And I wish that I would be able to give different commentary, but the truth of the matter is people need to hear the realness of what's going on with our youth, because nothing's more important than protecting our youth. I don't care, what kind of who is a star, a celebrity, or how much money's being made. Nothing's more important than protecting our youth. And we need to stand up on that and live and die by that. And that's my word on that. So African Bambaataa passes April 9th, 2026 in Pennsylvania. Complications of cancer, and we're gonna see how everything turns out. It's gonna be interesting to see who celebrates his life and who actually stands on principle and morals and integrity. All right, there's only one direction. This is Zaire. I'm out. Peace.